we can kind of go from there. Make sense?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So Gene, like the one thing that we were just talking about, and I think this is important why, just kind of slap record on this thing and maybe have a bigger conversation is, you're talking about marketing budgets during this whole coronavirus thing. And look, what are you seeing with your clients?
There's a couple that are increasing their budgets. And I think there's more. So one of the things that I started to do for a lot of my clients is offer free free advertising. So in other words, where I would normally charge a rate to create a campaign for them on Facebook ads, I'm giving back and saying, if you guys want to spend more money to enhance your profile so that when this is over, you get bigger results, I'm willing to do that for you because you're a loyal person to me. And it's
Sure.
important. It's important to me that you win. And if I can play a part of it in you winning when this is all over, or even now, I mean, what's funny is there's business is still happening in a lot of the sectors, right? So even in real estate, I saw
houses
somebody
are closing.
They are. It's crazy. And people are doing it right now, sight unseen.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to, I'm trying to give back in a way where, here's the other thing too. I think from a marketing perspective, I have pivoted a little bit, and this is all still new in the making. But I'm changing the way my service is pushed out. I guess is the way to say it. Like my service description has changed a little bit for the better of the clients. I think it's going to take me more time per client to handle each month, but it's going to be worth it in the long run for me.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, we've done the same thing. I mean, some of our larger clients can't really just say, okay, we're going to do that for free. Cause I mean, some of the campaigns we have set up that they want, it ties from, especially in e-commerce. It's like, okay, cart abandonment. Okay. Email goes out. Okay. They put this in the cart, then this has to happen because they didn't buy it, or then they bought it. Then it's like a follow-up. And so like it gets complex in some of the larger e-com ones that we do, but I get it. Like I'm doing a lot of work for breweries right now and restaurants, just helping them out, I mean, and it's fun, I mean, I think then some of them have been clients in the past. They were like, yo, we had to lay off most of our marketing people, or the person that was doing, cleaning out the tanks and doing our Instagram marketing. Can you help us with like a plan? And I think what you said is, you kind of help out, right? So that they win. I think that's step one. I think if everybody does that, but step two is what I worry about if this goes on a little bit longer. We're at we got a week left in April, and hopefully things will start to move, but not everything has stopped. And what I have been preaching about on podcast interviews, as well as stuff like this, has been, don't do it without a strategy. Because I'm watching people now, past clients, people that I've targeted for, hey, I would like love to talk to you sometime about it. And they're just doing, dude, they're doing stuff. And I'm like, yo. I'm like, I know probably day 1 or 2, when you put that ad out there, it was probably working and you got excited, but it's shifting so much with the ad spends and more people jumping into digital right now that you can see like, it's just, it's going down. It might pop up and get a spike, but it's not consistent. And that consistent part is what everybody needs to have a successful plan. And that's like my one fear is I did a webinar for the PGA yesterday of Philadelphia section. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, look, I'm like, if you want, I'm like, I put a link in there. I was like, 15-minute phone call. At least let me just kind of get your head straight. You may not have all the assets that you need, like the website and the email client and everything else to build out something perfect, but at least start with some sort of strategy, because what you're going to see is when everybody comes back on, that algorithm is going to change again. And say, if you had a smaller budget, you're just going to be washed away because of so much more volume going into the platforms. It'll be fascinating to watch.
No, that, and along with the pricing. So in the podcast, when we were talking about a little bit of this, I made a mention that, screen time has gone up 80% by some numbers, right? So people, and, even if it's not 80%, it's probably 50, right? Like I'm spending way more time looking at my screen than I would on a normal day. So I wonder, like, I just feel like the smart people are going harder on digital, which means there's more competition there. And I haven't seen the increase in pricing yet, but I wonder when that's coming.
Well, it depends what industry you're in. So I will give you a couple examples, because in preparation of the podcast, if we like went off into it, I wanted to talk about it. But now is a good time to kind of continue that, or that thought is what we saw at the very beginning was everything dropped. It went from like, okay, we're all the way up here, dropped. Conversions went up. So everyone's happy because all your little CPC, CPM, all little fun acronyms went up. Then they were looking really good, like crazy good, like anomaly good. Then what happened was in about 10 days, everybody regrouped and jumped back on. So then what you saw is it started to level out. But in some segments, like restaurants, craft breweries, golf courses, even real estate, because the real estate market, some of them, they just puckered up and like, I got to go in my hole until this thing becomes normal again, right?
Yeah, yep.
So they'll stop spending money. So you see that drop. So the way the algorithm works, not to get very technical, is Google and Facebook will look, and it's just like driving down a highway and the billboards are out there. And the beautiful thing about digital is that you can pick which highway you need to be on. I need to be on the golf highway, the craft beer, the real estate highway, and you can target those people. So your billboards are only being seen by people that are pulling on that highway with really good ideas that, hey, I want to buy a golf product, or I'm into craft beer, or I'm looking for a home. So that sort of stuff, like when that dropped, what happened was the highway was empty. So the billboards became cheap. And the biggest thing is as people started to come back in, now you're starting to see certain things rise up. Now, e-com right now, e-com's expensive. It's getting more and more expensive, I should say. Now, there's some cheap pockets in there that based off of this, when everybody left, that would be like, oh, yeah, well, I'll sell you my billboard for $10 because no one's seen it anyway because no one's on the road.
Right.
Then as more and more people were staying online, certain areas are just getting way expensive. The thing that I see and I keep talking about this too, is the backlash, so to speak, that whip that'll come around in say June, July. Let's just say best case scenario, things are really moving again, June, July, business wise. What you're going to see is a lot of things increase. You take corporations, I'm talking Coca-Cola, SAP, big time corporations that never really dumped a ton of money into digital. Guess what? That's where they're coming. And you can see it on LinkedIn already. The amount of traffic on LinkedIn right now, I mean, I haven't looked at it specifically, but the content on there has gone through the roof.
Yeah.
You're seeing more and more people post content. Not everybody has jumped on to the ad platforms yet, 100%. But if you're looking at saying, hey, we're not, like Microsoft canceled all their events until July 2021.
Wow.
A couple others are following suit. So those are huge budgets and huge events. They're all coming online. And what the interesting part is, and this is why I keep talking about strategy, Gene, like have to know like where you want, even if it's a smaller budget, you got to know what you want to get out of it, because once they get in there, this game's going to change again. So if you're sitting there as a small business owner or medium size and you don't know what you're doing, and you're like, well, we're not doing all this event marketing anymore, let's dump it into digital. You better have someone on your team that knows what the hell they're doing, or hire somebody, because what starts to happen when those things get crazy is, and if you've listened to anything previous to March 15th-ish of 2020 when I talk, is never look at your ad plans daily because you'll go insane.
Yeah, right.
But we've seen fluctuations in e-com that have been crazy from morning to afternoon. Like, and you're just like, because it's an anomaly, dude. Like you don't.
It's almost like day trading, right?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't put it quite like that, but it's similar. But it is starting to settle out. But we just haven't seen, to your point, coming full circle, is when's that influx come in and that spike comes up to buy that billboard, so to speak.
Right. No, this is unprecedented, crazy times, and you're making me think about a video I saw Gary Vee do, and this is a year ago. When he was talking about, might have been longer than a year ago, but he was talking about all the ad spend on television, and these Nikes and things. He's like, none of these big corporations are still pouring millions and millions and millions of dollars into advertising on ABC and CBS and the Super Bowl, to the tune of like $80 billion. And he's like, what happens when they start to transition that to where you're marketing for $5, per lead? That number is going to go up. So get in it now.
Dramatically, it's going to go up. And I've been preaching this for years. It's one of the reasons I started my agency, because I could see it coming, is essentially the end of TV. And, the big part about that is, I'm going to say the end of TV as you know it, but we've been involved with talks with a couple of companies. And, at the bottom of, if you have a smart TV, there's ads going right there.
Yep.
And that's like phase 2. I always said it was like 2023-ish. That was always the date I pegged, about 6 or 7 years ago, like, 2014, 2015. And this could accelerate that. And you're right. Like, so many big companies don't have giant digital, ad campaigns. They don't. But if you put an influx of, whatever that crazy number is, and you dump it into Google and Instagram and Facebook and all the other ad platforms, your ads are going to go up. And I think the biggest thing is if you're used to paying, like you said, like $5 a lead, maybe you're paying $7.50. Now that may not kill many businesses.
Right.
Some it's going to hurt a little bit unless you know what you're doing. So like what we've been doing for a while at Bad Rhino, just to combat that or essentially prepare for that, is you got multiple platforms. You can't just rely on Google. You can't just rely on Facebook. You can't just rely on Instagram. You can't just rely on geofencing. You can't just rely on your email. All those things have to be tied together, and make a more robust digital plan. And you'll actually see if your content's good, you'll see more and more people engage in it, but you have to keep that rolling. Like, you can't just be like, well, Google's working, we'll just stick with Google. And now I'm all for riding that horse to death until it doesn't produce anything.
For sure.
But you have to have a strategy about, okay, well, that shift. And now everybody's shifting. Where? Who knows? I mean, I don't have any answers 100% on timeframes, but it's fascinating to watch.
It's fascinating to watch. And I agree with you. I couldn't agree more, actually. I mean, you've been in this business a long time. And, last year when they were talking about starting to take the likes away from Instagram, you remember that?
Yeah.
And I remember the uproar was like, well, I'm an influencer, what do I do? Well, if you're an influencer on one platform and they pull the rug out from under you, you're screwed.
You're screwed, right? Anyway.
So from your point, it really is important, because here's the nature of human beings is that, I mean, you think about the cyclical nature of this, right? So say YouTube is your spot. And let's use Netflix. Netflix just gained 16 million subscribers this quarter because of the coronavirus, right? Crazy. And they were saying, you're talking about how TV is going to change as we know it. It already has. Netflix is.
Oh yeah.
Netflix is like this. I was talking to somebody on a call before you and I jumped on, and I was saying, I was reading an article the other day about how in a year from now, and I say this has been going on for 2 years already, but people are going to refer to video conferencing as Zooming. Yo, Marty, when are we going to Zoom again? Whether you're using Google's application, it's sort of like the Kleenex. Where are the Kleenex? Why we don't have Kleenex? I have giant brand tissues, right? But they're still Kleenex. I don't know. I'll Google it. Well, you're using Bing. How are you Googling it? It's just a verb you're using, right? And Zoom is going to be that verb. So if you don't have Netflix now, you're way behind the curve. But let's talk about the cyclical nature of the advertising. So right now, Netflix is the spot. Why? Because there's no commercials, right? Because
there's a ton of commercials. But
there are.
They're there.
They are. They do it in a way where at least makes you feel like I can watch a 1-hour show in 41 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And I do, until it starts to get inundated with the advertising and commercials, and then I will find the next Netflix, and that's what you're talking about.
What's funny is, like, they'll be sitting there and it'll be like Netflix, and they'll just be like, "Oh yeah, how's it going? Yeah, Gene, what's going on?" Like in the show, in the middle of the show. Yo, where are you headed? Oh, I don't know. What's going on? Just certain stuff. And then it's just like, have you seen the Indians play? And then it's like Major League Baseball's in there, and then it's just like, oh, dude, I'm really thirsty.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, people may or may not know, and this is like when we were kids, when Wayne's World came out, and they did all the product placement, and Wayne was like, he did that whole thing. He's like, like it made no sense, but he just stopped, and he's like, Pepsi. And it was like, the choice of the new generation or whatever, right? He just drinks a Pepsi, and then it switches over to Garth, and Garth's wearing like something silly. But that's how the marketing goes, and you can see it. It's for somebody like me, I've been studying this and doing this for 18 years now, and I can't watch certain things and you can't do it certain things because you can hear the marketing in it, and it's just like it alerts you. You wake up. But yeah, the Netflix stuff, I noticed that more and more. What was the one with the serial killer show? I was cracking up because whatever that new show was. It was so good too. Is Mine Hunters.
Oh, okay.
And right in the middle of the one interview, there's a giant Sprite can, right? So at first, I go, oh, that's cool. I'm like, yeah, I remember those cans when you were like real little. You know, it was like, man, you could probably cut your lips like a million different ways if you're
Yep.
drinking right from the can. And then all of a sudden, I started looking, and I was like, well, that's interesting. I'm like, it's right smack in the middle, and it's just like, and it's like turned, and it's just like Sprite, like right there during the interview, and they switch sides, and I'm like, well, the can wouldn't look like that, and I'm like, son of a bitch, I'm like, this is an ad. And then they go into another one, and you see it. They have a Coke, right? So the same family, Coke, Sprite. Then like the next season, they go into this interview room, and there's a Pepsi machine in big ass letters, like across, like, and it's just like you can't miss it. And the same thing with Apple computers. If you go and watch any movie and you think about it, like there's so many subtle things that you see with logos, and this goes back to anybody's brand and content. You know, like you have your mic there, you know, it's a Gene Volpe, you know, constantly, right? I'm wearing a hat that has a rhino on it, and I actually have a shirt on, which I didn't really notice. I'm double logoed. Don't want to do that.
We'll allow it. It's coronavirus, dude. You probably don't have any pants on, so
I wasn't planning on shooting a video for this part, but so the funniest thing is like you start to notice like the bigger players, and that's how they've been advertising. You know, I mean, Apple is going to run their, you know, social conscious company type ad, but they're like, when was the last time you really saw an ad that was like, buy an iPad, buy an iPhone, buy a MacBook? Now you see what it produces, like they sell it that way, but they're never like, hey, buy this phone, right? But it's so subtle in some of the movies and TV shows. When you notice it, it's like you can't help but notice it afterwards. And once you do it, you know, it's crazy.
No, I wanted to talk to you about something like that, because you're making me think of another advertising campaign from a big giant, and I want to see what your thoughts are, because you and I have had plenty of conversations about conspiracy theories and things, wild things, right? No, and I'm not going down that path, but there's two things, and when I say the name Starbucks, right, it's like it's known throughout the world, and it's at part of our vocabulary. And there's two things that they make me think of. Number one is, and then I really have a question about it. But the first one is, like, you've seen how many times where somebody's a barista has misspelled somebody's name on a cup, and sometimes it's so bad that it's a joke. Like one of my favorite memes of all time is a picture of a cup that says CARC on it. Have you seen this one? And it's and underneath, I've not seen that one. So it's a picture of a guy. Like if you're watching the video, it's a picture of a guy holding his cup, and he's got a picture of it, and it says underneath, subtitled, "I told the Mark with a C."
Yeah.
So it's so badly done that I did research, and there's articles out there that indicate that is through their training. And the reason why they do it in training is because they know the first thing is when somebody spells your name wrong, you're going to take a picture of it and put it on your social media. Like, talk about the subtlety of that brilliance. That's incredible. And the other one, so like, here's an example of something that when I went the conspiracy route, this is why I said that. Do you remember a couple months ago, there was that article about the Starbucks cup that showed up in the scene of Game of Thrones?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So why is that a big deal? You're telling me Starbucks wouldn't have paid one of those actors $100,000 to make that mistake, or one of the directors to make that mistake? Think about all the press that yeah, right. And but quietly, like, Marty, you're just going to do this, put it in a spot where it's conspicuous enough where nobody will catch it, but we want to be able to have it be seen so people can talk about it online. I don't necessarily think that was set up by Starbucks, but could it have been? That's the question.
So it's so funny you bring that up. There's a new Sopranos podcast, right? So, I mean, I love that show on so many levels because it was a precursor to the Netflix. It's a precursor to a lot of things. You know, I mean, people can debate like best show, Breaking Bad, Sopranos,
The Wire.
The Wire. But there's a lot of things that go around when you break through something, right? So they did that. Like, you can't take that away. If you don't like it, that's fine. But they're doing this podcast, and it's guy who played Bobby Bacala and Christopher. So it's Michael Imperioli and Steve Sciarippa. And I started listening by accident because, you know, it's just like, oh, new podcast, right? That's all I need is another hour-long podcast that I want to listen to regularly. Right. So I started listening to it, and they go through it, and the Starbucks thing comes up, and I think it's the second episode they ever did, and they're laughing because it's not it the content is really good because the whole show revolves around family things. It's, I mean, so like if you take out like the cell phone they're using or any technology, it holds up, like, because it talks about different things. It just happens to be set in the mafia, right?
Yeah.
So they're talking about when Paulie goes into, it's like a Starbucks like store. I don't know if it's actually Starbucks, but what is funny about it is that in Starbucks at the time was big but not huge, like
Right.
not like it was now is now. And the way they talk about it, but the way they shot the scene, you know, it's almost like an advertisement for Starbucks. It's like Paulie and I forget who else goes in, but they go in and they're reading off like, what's all this? You know, Italians created this, and they get all, you know, irritated about it, and they're like, they're stealing this and this is not right. But then when you really unpack that scene as they do in the podcast, it got me thinking about it, just what you said. Like, who knows? Like, there's, you know, there's deals like that that go on in movies, like, hey, put our product in there, we're going to pay you. And at the time, that show was just starting out. They had to get picked up. You know, one of the biggest shows of all time only had an audience for the most part of like 12 million,
Wow.
because that was like the peak of HBO subscriptions. And
Yeah.
when did you say 15, almost 16 million, I think, right, for Netflix last month? So
Yeah.
like that subscription model way back then, 21 years ago, was the same type of idea and concept in its very early formats. And I started thinking about it, like, because the conspiracy part, I was like, because I don't think it was named Starbucks. I'd have to double check. But if it was, I mean, it still looked the same. You know, people wearing the, you know, the aprons, they had like white shirts, like brown hats, you know, there was like all sorts of other equipment on the shelves, you know, and it was really fascinating to think about, like, all right, so maybe they did get a kickback from a company that was similar. And over time, you know, that's how certain things are funded, you know, without being just broadcasted out there. Like way back in the day, like radio shows in the beginning, you know, this is brought to you by so and so, you know, and so on and so forth. It has to be subtle because you wore out your welcome. No one's going to watch an hour-long show and watch commercials.
So as we're talking, it's not a Starbucks. I'm looking at the video, but it's them standing in here and they're talking about
Yeah, it's
like
almost
they're at the
exactly
counter.
like a Starbucks, though.
No, it
And then he
totally isn't. And
then
I
he
probably
steals the
thought that
French
when we
press
saw
at the
it.
back. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. And he steals a French press on the way out, like when he's in there. But that podcast, when I listened to it, it was funny because I started thinking about exactly what you mentioned, and then you fast forward, you know, 20 years after, and then you said, you know, Game of Thrones actor leaves a Starbucks cup on there. You know, do I think it was intentional? I don't know, but man, like, if it wasn't, somebody was patting themselves on the back of Starbucks, going, "Man, we lucked out on that one. That thing just went viral."
Yeah,
You
right.
know?
Yeah, no, and I think the part that I don't know is that the reason why I think about it that way is because there are some mad marketing geniuses, man, that just have another level of creativity, and that could have been like, yeah, I know this guy on set that's doing X, Y, and Z. What if you think if we slide that in there? It's going to cost us 150K, but you know, think about the back end, because you also have to be able to predict that something like that's going to work out over what you've invested in it too, right? Which is not easy.
100%. Yeah, and it's funny, yeah, because like I think there's a lot of misses there. So, you know, I think like you said, like 100 grand, and they're like, look, if this goes viral or whatever, you know, we'll give you something else on the back end. But I think about that more and more, and you see it like in sports. They started putting, well, in Europe forever, and then Formula One and NASCAR, they always had logos on the side.
Yep.
And there was only 2 years ago that basically the NBA started doing the same.
Yep.
You know, hockey. I remember, you know, my old man like was just going, oh, it just looks so trashy on the boards. I liked it when there was just like white, you know, and that was, you know, 30 years ago almost. But when they started putting ads on the side, you know, I just remember my first hockey game. So it had to be 85
Wow.
down to Spectrum. And there was no advertising on there. I think there might've been one thing on the ice, whatever it was, but outside of that, but then like the year after, it was just like everywhere, you know?
Well, you know, it's funny we go through that right now. So I serve on the board as one of the marketing guys for the local girls softball league,
Mhm.
and over the past couple of years, it's become how many logos can we fit on different parts of the fields and what should we charge for it? It's really what it is. And I mean, I don't feel bad about it because we're raising money for a girl's foundation, right? But it's like, let's squeeze every square inch out of where people are looking, the backstops and on the snack bar, and there's 5 spots on the snack bar, and we're renting out 2 different spaces on the scoreboards, and like, you know what I mean? It's on the jerseys. It's, you know.
It's funny is because, you know, when people come to us and they'll ask like, well, what do you charge? What do you do here? What do you know, how am I going to do it? I always just go back and like, well, before we get to that, let's talk about your own marketing.
Yeah.
And what you're currently doing, what's working for you. How are these things working for you? What are things, and how are you tracking it? You know? And it's funny is because, you know, I had, oh man, this is a long time ago, probably 8 years ago. We were pretty early on in an insurance company, smaller insurance company. And they were like, I asked them, like, where you get the most revenue? And the guy's like, I've been putting this sign out in the Little League for years. And he was the only sign. And I said, well, why are you reaching out if that's the only thing that's working for you? And he goes, they put more signs up.
Beautiful. Yo, listen, what's working? Let's replicate it, right?
Right. But he was telling you, is like, they put more signs up. He's like, so I'm not the only thing, you know. He's like, I have the scoreboard sponsorship still. But now I also used to have one in center field, and then snack bar was like one company. It was like, you know, like you think about how that's evolved because you know, fundraisers don't necessarily work anymore and other stuff doesn't work. So you got to maximize that. So you have kids have a nice place to play. And then you can also put together, you know, scholarships or fundraisers for people in need and do stuff good in the community. And he was like, yeah, he's like, I used to have that. He's like, everybody would call me. He's like, I basically had the whole field to myself. He's like about 1,000 people every weekend, give or take. And he was like, all, you know, out of that 1,000, he's like, I get 30, 40 new customers.
Dude,
you know?
you're talking about the noise level now that's on social media. Remember when the first guys marketed on social media, it was the only advertisement. Now you're competing against 985 other insurance people.
Well, when we started too, you know, in 2010, there was no ad platform. We were just doing it via organic.
Yep.
Right. So like doing that was just making something stand out just a touch. And it's like, oh yeah, I've been to that restaurant before. I'll like their page. I'll like this because there wasn't the volume.
Yep.
Now it's like, and that's why I said earlier on the podcast or today, it was like, you need to have multiple things going at once because you can't rely on one anymore.
No, you can't. There's no. It's too convoluted. You got to be. I'm all over the internet, and the more I see you on every platform I'm on, the more you're top of mind. That's really what it comes down to now, right? So I want to throw something else at you real quick because I thought we were talking baseball and softball and advertising with little leagues. This was something that a couple of years ago. So in our world, we have 2 main types of sponsorships. One is the sign in the outfield, which is $300, and one is you sponsor a team. And your name goes on their shirt with your colors. And that's $350. So it's a little bit more. And we were talking in a meeting, and being the marketer, sometimes you're wrong, right? Like in my case, I should be the expert, and I was wrong. And I said to the people, I feel like,
time.
I mean, you're going to be, right? The good part about it is the people that are able to pivot, right? And fix what's wrong, right? Yep. But the interesting comment that I heard was, I said, so let me ask you this. If you were a business owner, would you rather sponsor a team, or would you rather sponsor for $50 more or sign on a fence? And tell me why.
I mean, if it were me, I would rather sponsor the team, but that's like a personal thing. If I were looking out there and thinking about it, I would do the fence because every game is played at the same field, or majority is played at the same field. So I'm thinking that's a bigger thing. But if I was like, my gut would tell me to sponsor the team because it would help more. So that would be my instinct.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
So anyway.
Well, so here's the answer. And it's not really an answer. It's just an opinion. But when she laid the opinion out, because I said the same thing as you, I feel like you're getting more for your money with the sign because it's there. Everybody who travels through so we have 450 girls, which means there's 450 families. Just the parents is 900 people. So that's 1,300 people that are there every night. Not every night, but throughout the week. And then if you include grandparents and friends, we're talking about 2,000 people going through there, and that sign is there all the time. And one of the ladies who was on the board said, you know, Fred Beans Ford thinks the opposite. And I said, why? And she goes, think about what happens when you put Fred Beans Ford on one of these girls' shirts. And I'm like, I'm listening. And you watch it when you go to these games. Here's where, let's go Fred Beans, let's go Fred Beans girls. Their name is shouted out because it's on their jersey 25 to 50 times per game. And I'm like, oh shit. Like, not only do you see the shirt and people are looking at the shirt, but people are yelling out your business name on the field for 2 hours a night. And I was like, oh yeah, that's worth the extra $50, right? Like,
Really,
it's stupid.
yeah, I think that, no, it's a good point. I think, the other thing is too, is, I just kind of lost it there. Oh, so like when you're sponsoring the teams, right? And it's like I said, your gut, and that's why I said, like, my gut goes for the team, because I'm like, that's going to make more of an impact. I'm like,
Sure.
you get one sponsor for the whole place, but they're probably struggling as an organization to get 20, 30 people to sponsor uniforms. My question would always be like, can I sponsor 2 teams? Like, that allowed. That's just like the intrinsic part when you're doing a nonprofit thing. But it's fascinating, as you're right, like people yelling and doing all that. And I initially thought, if I'm a parent going and taking that jersey and you see it all the time, washing it, repetition, making sure your kids are, ready to go play, that whole chasing around, it's constantly there, staring you at the face,
Yeah, and think about it
that's
too.
really interesting.
And think about the loyalty that comes from that. Like, Bad Rhino was cool enough to sponsor my kids' team. I need marketing. I'll call those guys. They've been there. Last 3 years, they've been like, it's just an interesting concept. And it's one of those, like, when I talk to people, it's like, let's think outside of the box, because everybody can build a sign. But why would you, as a company, why would you want to go the shirt route?
My thing is, I think a lot of that, it's going to come back. I think businesses are going to look at that type of marketing, sponsoring little league teams, sponsoring local events coming out of this a lot more. And then, we've been approached by a few different companies, and they're struggling. Well, I should say nonprofits. They're struggling. And this is this,
right?
Because they're getting lost in the shuffle, and they're not just appropriating their dollars the right way. And that's why we always say strategy. If you have somebody has a really good strategy but a small budget, they'll kick the shit out of somebody that has a giant budget and no strategy every single time.
Yeah.
They may not get the volume, they may not be gazillionaires or raising, but if they can't pull that strategy together and know how it works, I don't care whether it's $300 a month or $300,000 a month or 300 million a month. 300 million you might win just for sheer volume.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
But ultimately you'll run into issues there and you'll just waste a ton of money. But if you can really get it down and you can do that, it's good for nonprofits. It's good to do that. And then you can take what you do in the community, like sponsoring a baseball team, softball team, and then advertise to that, hey, this is what else we do in the community.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's good. It's goodwill too. Like when I think people just like this, because, I got friends that sponsor, and he's like, I got a really good friend that owns a commercial glass company. And he's like, yeah, dude, just put the sign up at the Marble Newtown High School field. And I'm like, why? He's like, I know I'm not going to get any business out of it, but it's just something to do for somebody in the community. It's a good move,
And it's totally that same way as like where, I've done a ton of things over the years where I've sponsored things just like that. And it has nothing to do with getting business. It's just fun. It's just like,
that's a write-off too.
Yeah. You get this and you do this. But, I remember when I was like, I still remember, when you talk about branding in the jersey, I remember the guy that sponsored the field, Mel Nate's insurance company up in Percy area. And I played my last 2 years playing like intramural soccer, Moyer and Son gas station. And like, I can't remember yesterday, let alone but that's,
so listen, to
30
your point,
years ago,
to your point, I played Overbrook AA 51 baseball, hardball from the ages of, let's say I started there when I was 8 and finished when I was about 12 or 14. I played for the same team every year, the Tigers, and our sponsor every year was Scenario and Sons Flowers on Haverford Avenue. I mean, we're talking 37 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think what you're describing is an interesting, just a little segue. We I'm going to have to run here in a little bit, but the thing is like you build that loyalty. So like using the Netflix thing, and you saw the Sprite, right? I don't drink soda much anymore unless it's a mixer,
Yep.
And about 6 weeks or so after I watched that show, I was unfortunately sick with the flu. I came out, and you know how like sometimes after you kind of go through like that crazy illness, you want something sweet.
Oh, for sure.
All I craved was like soda. And what I got a Sprite. And I can't remember the last time I bought, like, I usually just Coke for me, just have a Coke, if
Yeah,
I have one very rarely. I got a Sprite, dude.
that's
Like,
pretty funny.
so that subconscious thing and the Netflix model and all that, but you can do those things and like you remember those things, as we're pulling out stuff 30 plus years ago, like who you played ball for, where, who sponsored your jersey, all that sort of stuff. You can do that online.
Yeah.
And I think for small businesses, that's why I keep saying, like, I'll say it one more time. It's a strategy. Like, what are you doing with the ad dollars you spend, the content that you create? Actually have an idea. Most people don't spend time. They're like, I just got to do this Facebook post and I'm going to post it up and I'm going to talk in front of this house and we have an open house on Sunday. Well, maybe you go in the morning and throw something out there and go, dude, I got this awesome place in Havertown. I am so excited to list this thing. I'm not going to tell you any details. I just got the contract signed. Ink's not even dry, but it's beautiful. If you're a family of say 4, got 2 kids, you want a yard to run around in. It's got some features in there that you're gonna blow your mind. I can't even believe I get to list this house because you know what? I can totally see a family living there 10, 15 years, going to school, raising your kids, send them off to college. You sell the house. You and your wife go off and you're empty nesters. Now you're down the shore because your house appreciated. This is the type of house that you want.
Nice.
It's the type of place that you want to sit in. Put that big screen TV in, have family movie night, get everything going, right? As long as you know your buyers, you can plant that seed early on. Do a video like that, plant it. Then the afternoon, it's like, I'm telling you, here we go. And now I put you through the whole part because people look for that and they feel that more so than actually going, holy shit, that's a nice fridge. Dude, isn't it a nice fridge? They just got it. It's a $2,000 fridge. Look at stainless steel. It's beautiful. Fuck cares.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be bitching in 6 months when somebody takes the handle off by accident. And you're like, oh man, now it's a $750 handle,
Or it's got fingerprints all over it.
Exactly. So like people talk about the features, but they don't talk about what people use a house for. And that's what I mean by like that subliminal branding is like, I'm more apt to remember going, man, I got to check out what, this guy or girl's got showing here this afternoon, just because I want to just see like their description of it. Right. And I might not even be interested in it.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say to you, when are we going to see the house? That sounded amazing.
I know. That's what I mean. Like, and people take that for granted and it's just a strategy. Anybody can do that. But sometimes like saying something like that, they feel salesy about it. And they're like, well, I just want my market. Well, that is marketing, so it's interesting.
You'd make a good real estate agent, by the way.
I probably would.
Nah, you would. Not that we would ever want to do that. But.
No offense to any real estate agents, but no, I know that whole drill.
Listen, I don't care if I'm offending a real estate agent. I don't want to do it. You're crazier than I am. That's all.
That's true. Let's just wrap it up. Like, what do you think is going to go on with this stuff?
I said this. I said this in the podcast, and I'm sticking to it. I think, and I did a live video for 30 days straight a little while back. I might jump back on because it's actually been really good, but it was a challenge that I was in. And one of the things, I came out of the box pretty hot. I might have been 3 beers in when I did it. I just said, there's going to be winners and losers out of this thing.
Totally.
There's just no 2 ways about it. And I don't think there's going to be an in-between. I think you're either going to win and you're going to win big, or you're going to suffer and you're going to be out of it. And again, outside of people who are sick, of course, right? Like there's going to be people that run into there's going to be people that are really run into hard times. And somebody might say, well, you know why I was a loser? Because X. Okay, no, I get it. You have good, but all things being equal, and we're all standing on solid ground at the end of this, I think there's going to be 10% of the people that, millionaires are made out of this stuff. And I keep saying to people, like, think about all the millionaires that were made out of the recession in 2008, right? And think about how only real estate and things surrounding real estate were affected. And I shouldn't say it that way because restaurants probably slowed down. There was a little bit less income discretionary for people. So certainly everything kind of felt that when the bubble burst. But it's never been something where there's been a worldwide thing. Everybody's feeling the same pain. There isn't one business hasn't suffered out of this.
Sure.
I shouldn't say it that way. There are some, the essential businesses. By the way, I am changing my outlook on the way this works, and I will be reviewing that governor's list that comes out and targeting the people that were essential businesses during this whole thing, right? So I'm thinking that my income from a marketing perspective would have been a lot more solid if 100% of my businesses came out of the gate as essential versus people that are stuck in lockdown, right? Like in real estate, they're making it very difficult in the state of Pennsylvania for real estate agents to do their work. And so without that comes less income, and less income comes less spending, and less spending means Gene might be on the sidelines for a little bit, right? Which I get. So I'm changing that, but I just think that there's just going to be big winners out of this, and there's going to be some big losers. And in my head, I just keep saying to myself, there's no way I'm going to be a loser. I'm going to get out in front of this. I'm going to pivot my business where it needs to. I'm going to contact the right people. I'm going to help and be giving and be a leader. And that stuff will work itself out in the next 18 months.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more there. We're old enough and go through 9/11. You go through 2008, 2009, and 10. Like, people forget, like, 2010 was no picnic.
Right. Yeah. Right.
It really, I mean, in my opinion, it really wasn't until about end of 2014, and that was kind of like a little blip in terms of like coming back, and a lot of people that I know were really cruising, for lack of a better term, until this hit. Like, they were seeing things, looking at like second homes, figuring out like where they want to potentially reallocate retirement dollars because things were quote unquote overflowing a little bit. And then you get this, kick right in the, where, and then you get that whole thing. And I think you're correct. And I've been having this, I wouldn't say argument, but I've been very adamant about telling my friends who own businesses, they're like, and none of this is wrong, by the way. They're like, well, I want to like reduce my prices. I want to help out as much as possible. Dude, do it and do it well. But I'm also going to tell you that if it's a current customer, a current client, and I'm not saying don't help. We've been doing a ton of it at Bad Rhino, a ton of it.
Right.
And even taking on some pro bono stuff just in the short term, just to help some people out, because it is a huge thing, But at the same time, it's reality. And guess what? There's going to be someone that's coming through with whatever business you are, like real estate agents, for example. People have been clamoring, and especially millennials who are starting to buy homes finally. They've been clamoring for a way where I don't have to go to see 6 houses in person.
Right. Yeah.
Well, guess what? If you're still operating on that model, no one's going to want to go see your houses. Like, you better have video in place. You better have, so that pivot is where that money is being made, will be made.
Yep.
And unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of businesses that go out. And, in the restaurant world, I see breweries, which I'm heavily involved in, as you know.
Yep.
A lot of them are going to take it on the chin. There's also, good things that'll come out of it. That doesn't all sound good. If you're sitting here going, shit, Marty, I'm following this because, I'm a brewery and I followed you and I'm listening to this and you guys are telling me to go out of business. There's opportunity there. You might have to sell your brewery and partner up with somebody else and make a kick-ass brewery, where you're doing everything that you ever wanted to because you have the knowledge and then you have the backing. I just remember coming out of 2008, 2009, where, like many people, I scraped by there with my fingernails.
For sure.
And came out with like a ton of debt and other stuff that was just, weighing everything down. And, you learn your lessons. And I think you're 100% correct. There's going to be winners and losers. And I think there's not going to be much in the middle. But people are like, oh, well, what do you mean? To your point, and the kind of wrap up that thought is, it doesn't mean that things are going to be horrible for people in the middle at all. And it's what's going to be happening is that if you don't get on board with a new program, i.e. how to market your business, i.e. how to sell your product or service, i.e. from a business perspective, adjust to some things, you're going to be stuck in the back. And it's going to be tough because I think things are going to be moving faster than they ever have. And it's actually, part of it is exciting. I've been reading a ton of economic reports, tons of them, to the point where I don't want to read them anymore. But, it's that extra additional education you need to put yourself through as a person and as a business owner, especially. You need to learn and hear all that. So it's always interesting. And the way those things lie is there's going to be a monumental shift.
Yep.
Business wise, where it's going to actually be, no one seems to know 100%, but it's a huge shift coming out of this. It'll be fascinating to watch and be a part of.
Yeah, I think some of the stuff is easy to see and some's not. Like I have a client right now that's busier than a one-arm paper hanger, as they like to say. That's an old one, right?
Yeah,
But
it is an old one.
right. But he has a product where he has a disinfectant spray, and on top of that, he has a microbial that helps kill germs. And it's
Nice.
100% water-based, which means you can spray it anywhere in your cars, in your house, in your whatever. And I'm like, if business is good now, I can't wait to see what happens like when gyms open back up, when they have to do that for their clients. Like I'm already talking to my gym and they're like, that's something we're going to need to do so we can go back to our client base and say, we're clean. We promise. Here's what we've done to help you. And I'm like, dude, you're making money now. I can't even imagine what the next year is going to be like. They're doing police cars and police stations and squad cars and ambulances and like just it doesn't end, schools, daycares. Imagine if your kid goes to a daycare, you're going to want to know that stuff's clean. So there are spots where you can easily identify that, okay, this is going to be a good 3 years for this guy. But for the most part, it's going to be tough to pivot, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our e-com like switched over to masks that could both from a help the community out standpoint. And, I mean, honestly, they were like, well, we got to do something. A friend of mine started a hand sanitizer company. They had a place that was producing it already. So it was like a quick phone call. They just created a new brand, bottled it, packaged it, and then they got everything logistically ready to ship. They did like 300,000, I think, in the first 10 days.
Wow.
Because you couldn't get it. So like, there's opportunity, not just quote unquote putting things out there because of this virus, but like the shifts that you're going to have to do. I mean, I was reading an article this morning where there's going to be no more middle seats in airplanes.
Yep, I saw that.
There's going to be like different ways, but I've probably seen 150 ads about home gyms.
Rogue is doing great right now. Like all these, Peloton is up,
I mean, I'm going to go, and work with my trainer again, but there is that tiny concern because, I mean, gyms, they are gyms. I mean, people sweat, people do that. They clean them before, they clean them again, but there's always an element of, when you go in there, you're coming out, you've are been breathing heavy and you've been sweating and you've been doing other thing, but there's that other side of it where it just weighs on your mind. And going back and taking this full circle with all the subconscious stuff that we were talking about, those types of things are going to weigh on there. So yeah, I mean, there's going to be opportunities, not just to clean stuff, but I think in other areas. So it's a good point.
Yeah. My buddy Pat, like I know you're going to wrap this up. My buddy Pat owns a commercial glass company, and they came up with these plexiglass standalone shields that they're selling and giving out to local businesses, nail salons, giant pharmacies, he pivoted from putting in big giant glass revolving doors and fixing the 37th floor at the Liberty Center to delivering 45 of these things to a local bank. Right. So it's a matter of, look, we're trying. I know at this time everybody wants to do good, right? And I think your intentions should be solid. But the reality of it is I still got to feed my family. So there's going to be a move towards people making money, right? You got to figure out how to get your business. No, there's not. As long as you're doing it not greedily and you're doing your part. I mean, that's what this is all about. So I like the pivot structure.
Absolutely, dude. Well, we'll do it again, man. It's great chatting with you.
You too, always.
All right. Stay safe, dude.
Thanks, Marty.